Hi, my name is Newell Davis with World Composting, and today I want to show you the difference between a wet bin and a dry bin. And there are some differences. I know a lot of people say I don't add enough air holes to my bins and that you need holes in the top and they're too wet. I tend to run my bins a little bit wet, and part of that is because I don't put air holes in the top, and that's so I can stack them if I want to. And then also I've found it just is a little bit easier to keep the worms happy if it's a little bit damp in there compared to dry. And I want to show you also the differences as far as what I see with the worms in these two types of systems. So let's go and take a look, and I want to show you what a damp bin looks like, and then we'll look at a dry bin. So let's go and take a look at the first one. Here's a wet bin. Okay, so here's the first bin we're going to look at. It's the wet one. And just as you can see in here, it's really moist. There's not a lot of moisture on the lid, but this bin has, you can see it's almost like mud. This one has too much water in it. So this is too moist. What can you tell? Look at all the worms in this. I mean, you can just see them. They're just all over the place up top here. And there's water in the bottom of this. It's probably going to smell bad. This is too moist, but I just want to give you the difference here. That's why I did this. But see, one of the big things I've noticed is that some of the worms get really big. As you can see, I mean, this is way too moist. Surprisingly, I'm not smelling anything bad in here, which is sort of surprising. But I mean, you can just see. I mean, look how big these worms are. All right. So the worms in this are just massive. Let me just see if I can pull this a little closer to the screen for you here. I don't know if that's too much glare, but there we go. Maybe if I move it that way. I mean, they're just massive worms in here. And that's one of the things that you get in these wet bins. I mean, you could tell that this has some stuff that's still not decomposed in here. But, I mean, anywhere I dig in here, I mean, it's just worms galore. And I can even see, I mean, I see cocoons in here as well. I mean, it's just, but this bin there's not a lot of food in here, but they're still just consuming whatever they can in here, and it's doing really well. These are actually wood pellets, I think, on the bottom here. So, you know, the wood chips that I've added. So, I mean, I've stopped feeding this one. I'm trying to get them to consume everything that's left in here, but there's just, I mean, and I can see, I mean, there's more cocoons right here even. So there's a cocoon right there, right next to the peanut shell. It smells a little bit maybe over here, but still, even though this is like, I mean, this is obviously too wet, and it still is running just fine. You know, I mean, you can hear it. I mean, you can tell. I mean, this is way too much moisture for this system. This was actually the system I'd thrown my bokashi in. But I mean, you can just look at these worms. I mean, look how big they are, though. And these are red wigglers. It's not a different type of worm. These are red wigglers. And they're just massive. And they're proliferating in here like crazy, even though there's not a lot of food. I throw food in, and they just swarm it like crazy, which I'm probably going to have to do to get them out of here. And this is the other problem. My glove is now saturated with this stuff. And again, there's been another cocoon right there on the tip of my glove. So you can just see, I mean, like they really do well in this type of system. This isn't how I typically run my systems. This one has just been way too long. I haven't dried it out, you know, and it really needs more bedding in here to kind of dry it out. And I really need to sort this in some way. And this would probably be, to sort this would probably be actually a, there we go. This is something else that's in here. This is a crab claw. This shows you that this was bokashi. This is definitely bokashi, or lobster claw right here. So, but you know, this is not typically how I run my bins. So, this is a very odd situation because of the bokashi. It's been very hard to sort it, and you know, at one point it did really kind of smell with the bokashi in here. So, it was really hard to get this cleaned. It doesn't smell now. I do need to sort it, but this is what a wet bin looks like. There's worms all throughout the system. They all are pretty healthy. They probably need some food in here to entice them out. But cocoons galore. It's just that this is really hard to sort. It's really hard to take care of. You can get easily anaerobic spots in here that'll smell. So this is not how I typically run my bins. This is too wet. But I wanted to give you an idea of what it looks like. Big worms. If you're fishing a lot, this might be the way to run it, so that way you can get big worms for fishing. But now let's go take a look at a bin that's too dry. And I just want you to see the differences here. All right, so here is my dry bin. So I've got just a towel on this so it gets a ton of airflow. As you can tell, this is really, really dry. I mean, this is just so dry. There's no bugs in here or anything, but this paper is not breaking down. You can see over here, the material's just really dry. But here's the big difference. Can you guys see the worms in there? They are tiny. There's one big one there, but the rest of them are just absolutely tiny. And you can see them down in here too. I mean, you can just see them. You shake this around a little bit. I mean, they're just absolutely tiny in here. It's really hard to see here. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit and bring you over. Actually, let me just move this. There we go. So you can just see, these are worms right here. They are tiny. No cocoons, really. And this is too dry. So I just want to show you the difference here. There's tons of worms in here, though. I mean, this handful of worms probably has, 200 worms in it. They're just really, really tiny. I mean, you can tell there's a little tiny one right there. I mean, they're just tiny. So this is why I don't run my bins dry, and I prefer to run them moist. I mean, you can really see. I mean, here we go. This is a good one right here. So you can see there's a couple big ones, but most of them are really tiny in here. I mean, I'm really zoomed in there so you can see them. So this is why I don't run bins this way. This is too dry, but the drier you get, this is as dry as you can make it. I mean, this is almost, material's almost so dry that it's almost killing the worms. There's a little bit of moisture in here, but not much. After this, I'm going to spray this down. I kind of actually waited a little bit extra. Let me just zoom me back out here. I waited a little bit longer so you guys could see it before I wet it down, so you can see what happens when it's too dry. And then on top of that, they're not eating any of this bedding. They can't. It's not dry. It's too dry. It's crunchy. You hear that? I mean, there's no moisture in it, so they can't eat it. So, I mean, even you can see right here, this is actually a really good example. You can see that's the size worms that you have right there. This tiny little worm. And there's a whole horde of them in here, but they're not viable. They're not going to help you go through food. This also will not go through a lot of food. They have trouble consuming it. They're too small. There's not enough moisture in here. So this is why I tend to run my bins more on the moist side, because if you go too far on the moist side, they can still survive. You go too far on the dry side, your bin just shuts down and they stop eating. And you get a whole bunch of little tiny worms that really aren't doing a whole lot and are really hard to see and take care of. So that's what I wanted to show you guys, the difference between a really, really dry bin that this is and a really, really wet one that we had before. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have questions, please let me know. The reason why, by the way, the reason why this one does not have any, did not have the normal top is that this doesn't have holes in the sides. That's why I put a towel on top so we get enough airflow. But in the process, it's too fast. I mean, everything just, the moisture just goes right out of the system. So thank you for watching. If you have questions, please let me know. And if you have thoughts on this, please let me know as well. Let me know in the comments what you think. If you run your bins, if you run a bin like this, do you run it dry or wet? The bag systems, they kind of self-regulate typically. They're pretty good by themselves. They'll drip out if they're too wet, and if they're too dry, you'll know, and you can add moisture to them or more moist food. But these systems really don't have the ability to manage themselves. You have to manage how they work. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this. And until next time, please keep letting me know how you're doing with your worm bins. Thank you.